Hi everybody, welcome to the podcast. Today I want to talk about the missing buckets, and this is quite important because it's going to help you do the process of the buckets of love much more quickly. When I talk about the missing buckets, I'm talking about buckets that you won't really have to worry about. I think there's around 20 buckets that I did podcasts on various subjects. However, you won't really find some of those buckets might be appropriate for you or relevant in any way. For example, if you don't have children, you won't need to do the children bucket. If your relationship with your family and parents is good, you won't need that one. Perhaps the money goes well with the both of you. You've sorted that one out, and you don't fight about money. And there are other ones like there might not be illness because perhaps you're young, or there might not be work problems because you're both retired. Go and have a look at the list with your little piece of paper and take out the ones that aren't appropriate, and that'll actually make your workload less, be less to do. The other thing you can do is also make a little thing on your table, the two of you, and decide which ones are actually working well, because that's a really positive thing to do. If you're doing this, it's because you do know intuitively there's something wrong, it's not quite right, or it's changed, and you need to sort of address some of the issues. However, if you also put out the ones that are doing really, really well, you can actually feel more positive about your relationship. You might find the physical relationship is always good between the two of you. It's always been really strong. You have great chemistry, and that's a really good part of your relationship. Even when everything else is going to crap, the physical relationship is working. Or you might find the mental stimulation one, that you both mentally still talking to each other, you find each other really interesting and fascinating, and you can really get very quickly connected in that way, and you might even be quite telepathically linked, saying the same thing at the same time, knowing what the other person's kind of feeling or thinking, particularly thinking, and that might be a very strong one. The faith one, perhaps you are on the same page with the faith one, perhaps you're both of one faith, or perhaps you're both very spiritual people, or you're both atheists. And so in that way, you're both on the same page with those particular buckets. I want you to go through the buckets together and then put the ones that you don't really have to work on, put those little pieces of paper, those buckets aside, and then you can also look at some of the others that are very good, they're working all the time. You're both happy about those ones. And that can make a big difference to feeling that you're getting less and less to actually deal with, and it's not as complicated. Because having the 20 little things, I think, is a bit complicated. People who don't have abusive relationships or are in abusive relationships, that's not an issue. That one gets taken out. And you'll find you can probably, I would say there's probably 2 or 3 that don't actually count because you don't have kids or you don't work or there's no illness, something like that. And then there will be hopefully more than 3 or 4 that are actually working quite well. It might be that you've already done work on it or just naturally works really well. You can have that as well. So that actually can work for you and be an advantage for you as well. Think about these things and think about how you're going to do it. Okay? I kind of feel if you can make it more simple for you and your partner, you're more likely to actually go through the process, and also your focus will be better because you'll be focusing on really where there are problems, not kind of getting lost in the 20 little pieces of paper. It's a really great process. I really like doing it. I found it really interesting, and it really awakened me to what was good in the relationship as well. When things are going tough, I was thinking, well, these parts are really, really good in the relationship, and that actually held it stronger. Then not having to have such a large amount of areas to focus on meant that I can take those problem areas and put them into an order, and that's what you can also do. So, for example, just say you've got 5 like buckets that aren't working as well as you'd like. Do the ones at the top first that are the most problematic, and put them at the top, and put those in an order. Now, if you've both decided you've got the same buckets, you can do it, but you might also find that your bucket in one thing is fine and your partner's in that is not fine. So it's actually not a problem for you, but maybe it's like a problem for them. And that's where you also have to look as well. For example, perhaps one of you works too much and the other one doesn't like it. So then just say if you're the workaholic, for you it's not a problem because you love working and you don't mind if they work too because it makes you feel less guilty. But for them it's a problem because you're not seeing them enough, you're not spending enough time together, and they feel that they're not being prioritised, that work's always being prioritised. Unfortunately, with some jobs where you're on call, on emergency, or where you have to travel, maybe be away for 2 weeks on an oil rig or something like that, it's very hard to solve it. But when you are together, you be together. So then you've got to do the work a little bit more to fix that. So there will be buckets where you both need to make an effort and make it work. And then there'll be buckets where only one of you is really talking to the other and going like, what do you need now? I think I'm not doing very well in this bucket. It's very important that you play around with this. You can do this for months or years, and you can share this information with your friends, please. You can send them to my site if you want to, but you can share the information, because I think if you start looking at your friendships around the place where the people are in relationships, you might very quickly now be able to ascertain which buckets aren't working for them by how they're speaking. And then you can talk to them about maybe you need to go and talk about that bucket because it's not working very well. We're basically trying to say we're in a love relationship. We've got past that little first honeymoon stage where everything's so wonderful and you don't see anything except them and love, and all you want to do is be with them, which is wonderful. I love that bit. But now we say we do love each other and we want to stay together and we want to make this work. And because we want to make it work, we're prepared to sit down and really nut it out and find out where it's going wrong. That's why I wrote the book. It's like people don't know why it's going wrong. And the reason it's going wrong is because one of these buckets isn't working for you or for them. And when one of those buckets doesn't work for one or the other or both, you're going to find you're going to have serious problems arising from that. If you can keep working on this, I'm really sure that your relationship will improve. I really think that. And you'll start to feel happier. And it's funny because if you start working together like this and talking to each other and making each other's needs be met and then making each other happy, you will both be happier. Because it's always nice to be able to make it better and make it nicer, because we all want to live in harmony and we all want to live in love and we all want to live in peace. We don't want to really be fighting all the time. Not really. That's not how it was at the beginning. So the fact it's morphed into this means there's something wrong. Go away, work on the buckets, set them all out like I suggested. If you come up with any ideas between the two of you, do that. Do it gradually. There's no big rush. You don't have to fix it all up. But you do need to know why it's not working now and how your partner feels and how you feel, and then how you can go about meeting their needs by really talking to them, really talking to each other and say it. And you might find you say, for example, you might say something about the romance bucket and you might say you need this and this, and then later that week or in 2 weeks' time you might come back and say, I also like so-and-so, by the way. And it's okay to do that, because we don't get the answers to everything always at the same time. For example, when I'm doing my writing of my books, it all comes in the middle of the night. I think of another chapter and I have to wake up and write it down. So we're in a work in progress, aren't we? Have fun with the buckets, have fun with all these little pieces of paper, and I really hope this will help your relationship and help you. And then you've done what you can do to try and make it work. And if the other person doesn't really want to, well, at least you've tried really hard and you've opened that door to love, because that's what I call it. That's the door to love. That's what we're opening. So love your partner and love your relationship, and like a garden, tend to it. And I'm sending you lots of love and lots of healing.